The story of America isn't just about booming skylines and glittering suburbs, it's also about cities slowly bleeding out, places where empty houses outnumber families, and hope fades with every for sale sign. In 2026, millions are packing up and leaving once proud cities behind, driven out by crime, collapsing infrastructure, failing schools, and economic despair. These aren't just dots on a map, they're communities that built America, now struggling to survive. Here is the top 10 dying cities everyone is leaving in 2026, a countdown that shows what happens when the American dream slips away. Number 10. Oakland, California. Oakland has long lived in the shadow of San Francisco, once celebrated as the affordable alternative across the bay. But that reputation has crumbled. Over the last decade, Oakland has been losing people at a pace that shocks even longtime residents. Census data shows the city's population dropped by more than 5% between 2020 and 2023, and the decline hasn't slowed since. For working families and middle-class dreamers, the math no longer adds up. Housing is a major culprit. The median home price now hovers above $750,000, and average rents sit near $3,000 per month, pushing many households to the brink. For those earning the city's median income, about $90,000 annually, these costs swallow nearly half their paycheck before food, childcare, or healthcare are even considered. Families who once saw Oakland as a chance for stability are loading moving trucks and heading east to cheaper places like Sacramento, Reno, or even across state lines. Crime compounds the crisis. Oakland reported over 12,000 burglaries and motor vehicle thefts in 2022, and more than 100 homicides each year in recent times. These aren't just numbers, they shape the daily rhythm of life, making even routine errands feel unsafe. Businesses like Walgreens and Target have shut their doors in certain neighborhoods, unable to absorb security costs or theft losses. As stores close, basic amenities vanish, leaving communities underserved and frustrated. Economically, Oakland faces turbulence. The Port of Oakland remains a major hub, but automation and shifting trade routes mean fewer jobs than decades past. Tech spillover briefly buoyed the economy, yet mass layoffs in 2023 and 2024 wiped out thousands of high-paying roles. Downtown office towers now echo with emptiness, their for-lease signs glowing like quiet symbols of a fading boom. And yet, Oakland's story is heartbreaking precisely because of its spirit. This is a city with deep cultural roots, birthplace of the Black Panther Party, home of legendary sports teams, and a rich music scene. But numbers don't lie. Oakland lost nearly 25,000 residents in just 5 years, and many more are weighing their escape. The city isn't dying from lack of soul, it's being crushed by the cost of survival. Number 9. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago is a city of big shoulders, but lately it feels like those shoulders are carrying too much weight. Once the industrial and cultural heart of the Midwest, Chicago has been steadily losing people. Between 2020 and 2023, the city lost nearly 80,000 residents, a stunning drop for a metropolis that once seemed untouchable. Families are fleeing not just the winters, but rising crime, sky-high taxes, and a cost of living that no longer feels justified. At the center of the struggle is public safety. In 2021, Chicago recorded over 3,500 shootings and 797 homicides, some of the highest numbers in decades. While recent years have seen slight declines, the city's reputation as a dangerous place has been cemented in the minds of many. Parents worry about raising children here, and businesses quietly relocate to safer suburbs. The financial strain is another push factor. Illinois has one of the highest property taxes in the nation, with effective rates topping 2% in Cook County. For a modest $300,000 home, that's about $6,000 a year in taxes, before adding insurance and utilities. Couple that with rising rents averaging $2,300 per month and a city sales tax of nearly 10.25%, and wallets bleed fast. Economically, Chicago still has a pulse. Its downtown skyline is iconic, and institutions like the University of Chicago and major healthcare systems keep jobs flowing. But cracks are showing. Office vacancy rates in the Loop hit over 22% in 2023, one of the highest in the nation, as remote work gutted demand. Whole blocks of downtown now feel quieter than they should, giving off an unsettling air of decline. Yet Chicago remains rich in culture. Deep dish pizza, Wrigley Field, jazz clubs, and architectural wonders still shine. But residents are asking, is it worth the cost, the stress, and the uncertainty? Increasingly, their answer is no. Chicago isn't collapsing overnight, but the slow leak of its population tells the real story. People are leaving, and the city hasn't found a way to stop the flow. Number 8. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Baton Rouge, Louisiana's capital city, once stood tall as a hub of oil, gas, and state politics. But the energy has been draining, literally and figuratively. Over the last decade, Baton Rouge has faced a steady outmigration. Census figures show that from 2010 to 2020, the metro barely grew, while the urban core lost thousands of residents. And the story since then has been one of quiet decline. Housing is relatively cheap compared to national averages, with median home prices around $230,000, but affordability alone isn't enough to keep people. Many middle-class families are leaving because jobs aren't keeping pace with inflation and wages lag behind. The petrochemical industry, long a backbone of the region, has shed jobs due to automation and global energy shifts. By 2023, employment in the sector was down nearly 15% from a decade earlier. Crime has also plagued Baton Rouge. In 2021, the city recorded a record 149 homicides, making it one of the deadliest small cities in America. Though numbers fluctuate, the perception of danger lingers. Insurance premiums skyrocketed, with homeowners often paying $4,000 to $6,000 annually, largely due to crime risks and storm exposure. Flooding and climate threats only add fuel to the fire. The catastrophic floods of 2016 displaced tens of thousands, and residents still fear the next major storm. Federal maps show much of the area in high-risk flood zones, and that reality weighs heavily on homeowners considering whether to stay or go. Baton Rouge isn't without heart. Its culture, Cajun food, LSU football, vibrant festivals, still shines bright. But when families balance lifestyle against economic stagnation, high crime, and natural disaster risks, many choose to move north or west. The result? A capital city that feels like it's shrinking in influence and population, slowly losing its grip as people slip away. Number 7. Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham was once the beating heart of Southern industry, known as the Magic City for its explosive growth during the steel boom. But that magic has dimmed. Since the 1970s, Birmingham has been losing population, and by 2020, it had shrunk from a peak of 340,000 residents to just 200,000. That's a loss of nearly half its people, a staggering decline for a once thriving city. The reasons are layered. Manufacturing jobs disappeared as steel mills shut down, and while healthcare and education have replaced some of that base, they haven't been enough to keep younger generations from leaving. Median household income hovers around $41,000, well below the national average, making it difficult for families to build wealth. Crime is another thorn in the city's side. Birmingham has one of the highest violent crime rates in the U.S., with nearly 1,500 incidents per 100,000 people, more than 4 times the national average. Even as leaders push redevelopment downtown, new lofts, breweries, and restaurants, the shadow of crime keeps suburban flight alive. Housing, on paper, looks like a bargain. Median home prices are around $120,000, among the lowest in the nation, but the low cost reflects deeper challenges: stagnant wages, underfunded schools, and infrastructure that hasn't kept up. Many neighborhoods are dotted with vacant homes, their boarded windows telling stories of families long gone. Despite these struggles, Birmingham clings to its history and resilience. The Civil Rights District stands as a symbol of change, and local institutions like UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham, anchor the economy. Yet, population decline continues, and the question looms: how much longer can the city sustain itself? Birmingham isn't dead, but it's undeniably a shadow of the powerhouse it once was. Families are leaving for suburbs like Hoover or even out of state, chasing safety and opportunity. The Magic City has been fighting to reinvent itself, but for now, too many are still disappearing from its skyline. Number 6. New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is one of America's most iconic cities, a place of jazz, Mardi Gras, and Creole magic. But behind the brass bands and beignets, a quieter, more painful story is unfolding. People are leaving. The population of New Orleans has never fully recovered from Hurricane Katrina in 2005, when nearly 500,000 residents were displaced. Today, the city has about 370,000 people, still far below its pre-Katrina peak of nearly 500,000. And each year, the slow drip of outmigration continues. Why? For many, it comes down to the crushing mix of poverty, crime, and infrastructure decay. New Orleans has a poverty rate of nearly 23%, one of the highest of any major U.S. city. Job opportunities are limited, heavily reliant on tourism, hospitality, and service industries that often pay low wages. When the pandemic halted travel, tens of thousands lost jobs and many never returned. Crime has only added to the city's struggles. In 2022, New Orleans briefly became the murder capital of America, with a homicide rate of 74 per 100,000 residents, a staggering figure that left families fearful for their safety. Carjackings, burglaries, and violent crimes have remained stubbornly high, pushing middle-class families into the suburbs or entirely new states. Then there's the looming shadow of climate change. Rising seas, stronger hurricanes, and an aging levee system all keep residents on edge. After Hurricane Ida in 2021 left the city without power for weeks, many residents threw in the towel and moved elsewhere. Insurance premiums reflect the risk. Homeowners often pay $5,000 to $7,000 a year, with some policies canceled outright. Still, New Orleans is unlike any city in the world. Its food, culture, and spirit are unmatched, and festivals like Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest draw millions. But the question residents face is sobering. Can you build a stable life here long-term? For many, the answer is no. The exodus tells the tale. A city with a heart of gold, but a future clouded by storms, both literal and economic. Number 5. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis once symbolized American growth, its iconic gateway arch welcoming travelers with a promise of opportunity. But today, the city tells a different story. Since its population peak of 856,000 in 1950, St. Louis has shrunk to under 300,000 residents, losing more than two-thirds of its people. That staggering decline makes it one of the fastest shrinking cities in the U.S. The reasons are no secret: industrial decline, suburban flight, and a crime wave that has long plagued its reputation. In 2021, St. Louis recorded a homicide rate of 65 per 100,000, ranking among the highest in the nation. Entire neighborhoods have been hollowed out, dotted with vacant homes and empty lots. Property values in some areas are shockingly low, with homes selling for as little as $40,000 to $60,000. But few buyers are willing to gamble on unsafe streets and crumbling infrastructure. Economically, St. Louis still has powerful anchors: healthcare systems, universities, and companies like Anheuser-Busch and Boeing. Yet these strengths haven't translated into enough revitalization for ordinary residents. Median household income sits around $47,000, well below the national average, making it difficult for families to climb the economic ladder. Office vacancy rates have also soared above 20%, as downtown struggles to attract new businesses. Suburban sprawl has also drained the city. While Metro St. Louis remains home to nearly 2.8 million people, much of that growth bypassed the city itself, leaving behind concentrated poverty in the urban core. Schools are underfunded, services are stretched thin, and young professionals often opt for suburbs like Clayton or Chesterfield instead. And yet, St. Louis holds on to its pride. The arch still gleams on the Mississippi, and the Cardinals keep Busch Stadium alive every summer. But the reality is sobering. The city has been bleeding residents for decades, and unless something drastic changes, the decline is unlikely to reverse. St. Louis is a symbol of resilience, but also of the painful cost of urban decay in the American heartland. Number 4. Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, affectionately called Charm City, has a story that's both inspiring and tragic. Once a booming industrial hub, the city's population peaked at 950,000 in 1950. Today, it hovers just above 560,000, meaning Baltimore has lost nearly half its people in 70 years. And that decline hasn't slowed. The causes are complex, but the struggles are clear. Baltimore has long battled violent crime. In 2022, the city reported over 330 homicides, maintaining one of the highest murder rates in the nation, about 57 per 100,000 people. Entire neighborhoods feel abandoned, and thousands of row houses sit boarded up, silent reminders of the families who left. Economically, Baltimore has faced the collapse of manufacturing jobs that once sustained its working class. While institutions like Johns Hopkins University and its massive hospital system remain strong, much of the city's workforce is locked out of these high-paying jobs. Median household income sits around $58,000, but poverty affects more than 20% of residents, creating a stark divide between thriving pockets of wealth and struggling blocks just a few miles away. The cost of maintaining aging infrastructure has further strained the city. Schools face chronic underfunding, public transit lags, and water systems need billions in repairs. In 2023, city officials admitted that tens of thousands of water bills were inaccurate, highlighting the dysfunction many residents face daily. Despite these challenges, Baltimore still fights to live up to its Charm City nickname. Its harbor, seafood, and cultural identity remain strong draws. Revitalized areas like the Inner Harbor and Fells Point show that investment can breathe life into the city. But those bright spots feel overshadowed by the exodus. Since 2010 alone, Baltimore has lost over 35,000 residents, and the trend shows no sign of stopping. Baltimore is a city of grit, art, and resilience, but for many, the risks and struggles outweigh the charm. It's a painful reality, a city rich in history and culture, slowly watching its population slip away. Number 2. Flint, Michigan. Flint has become synonymous with urban decline, a city whose very name triggers images of crisis. Once a booming General Motors hub with nearly 200,000 residents in 1960, Flint has since lost over half its population, now sitting just above 80,000. The collapse of auto manufacturing hollowed out the city's economy, leaving behind abandoned factories, vacant homes, and generational poverty. But it was the water crisis that defined Flint's downfall. In 2014, a disastrous switch in water sources exposed tens of thousands of residents to lead contamination. For years, families drank, bathed, and cooked with poisoned water. Even after lawsuits and billions in aid, trust has never fully returned. The damage wasn't just physical, it was psychological, leaving residents questioning whether their city government could ever protect them. Economically, Flint still struggles. Median household income is barely $37,000, and nearly 35% of residents live in poverty, one of the highest rates in the nation. Unemployment remains stubbornly above the national average, and many who can leave do. Since 2010, Flint has lost more than 20,000 residents, accelerating a decades-long decline. Property values reflect the collapse. The median home price sits at about $55,000, but some homes sell for as little as $10,000. Whole neighborhoods feel abandoned, with boarded-up windows and overgrown lawns serving as constant reminders of the city's struggles. Crime is also a persistent challenge, with violent crime rates nearly triple the U.S. average. Yet Flint is not without resilience. The University of Michigan Flint, local entrepreneurs, and community activists continue fighting for renewal. Some neighborhoods are slowly rebuilding, with new businesses and art spaces breathing small pockets of life into the city. But the overall trend remains grim. For many families, the scars of the water crisis and the lack of opportunity outweigh any reason to stay. Flint is a city full of survivors, but also a city many have already left behind. Number 1. Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, the capital of Mississippi, is perhaps the most vivid example of a city in crisis. Once home to over 200,000 residents in the 1980s, its population has plunged below 150,000 today, and the decline is accelerating. What's driving people away isn't just economics, it's a full-blown collapse of basic infrastructure. The city's water crisis has become national news. In 2022, flooding overwhelmed Jackson's fragile water system, leaving 150,000 residents without safe drinking water for weeks. Boil water notices became a routine part of life, and even today, many residents don't trust what comes out of their taps. For a capital city in the United States, the image of residents lining up for bottled water is nothing short of shocking. Crime is another harsh reality. Jackson consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in America, with a homicide rate over 90 per 100,000 people in 2021, one of the highest recorded anywhere in the country. Families cite safety as one of the main reasons they've left for nearby suburbs like Madison and Ridgeland, draining the city's tax base further. Economically, Jackson struggles with some of the lowest incomes in the nation. Median household income is around $39,000, and nearly 25% of residents live in poverty. With limited job growth and chronic underfunding of schools, the cycle of decline keeps repeating. On top of it all, governance and political battles between city and state officials have slowed solutions. Billions are needed to fix water systems, roads, and schools, but funding moves slowly. For residents, patience has run out. And yet, Jackson holds pride in its deep Southern culture, blues history, and resilience of its people. But the exodus speaks volumes. Families who once called Jackson home are choosing safer, more stable communities nearby. The city stands as a painful example of how infrastructure failure, crime, and poverty can hollow out even a state capital. Jackson isn't just shrinking, it's on the edge of collapse.